I found a used pregnancy test hidden behind the bathroom radiator, and it wasn't mine. My name is Marc, I'm 36 years old, and I work as an orthodontist in Pasadena. For 8 years, I thought I had built something solid with Elisabeth, my wife who runs a busy veterinary practice downtown. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on South Arroyo Boulevard with our orange tabby cat, Rufus. The California winter was unusually cold that year, and I remember how the heating bills kept climbing while Elisabeth complained about the drafts coming through our old windows. Our life together seemed ordinary in the best possible way. I'd leave for the office at 7:30 each morning, spending my days straightening teenagers' smiles and reassuring nervous parents about treatment plans. My consultation room had large windows overlooking the San Gabriel Mountains, and on clear days, I could see the snow-capped peaks in the distance. I had built my practice from scratch after my first marriage ended, and it had become something I was genuinely proud of. Most of my patients were locals, families who had been coming to me for years, trusting me with their children's smiles and their own dental concerns. Elisabeth's schedule was more erratic: emergency surgeries, late-night calls about sick animals, weekend shifts. I never questioned it. That was her passion, and I respected the dedication it took to care for creatures that couldn't voice their own pain. She would come home exhausted some nights, smelling of antiseptic and dog shampoo, collapsing on the couch while I made dinner. Other nights she'd be energized, telling me about a successful surgery or a puppy she'd saved from parvo. I loved seeing her face light up when she talked about her work. We had talked about children early in our marriage, but Elisabeth always found reasons to postpone. "Let me establish the practice first," she'd say. "Let's travel more before we're tied down. Let's save more money. Let's wait until we buy a house instead of renting this apartment." I was patient, perhaps too patient. I had been married before, a brief mistake in my late 20s to a woman who wanted to move to New York for her career, while I was determined to stay in California. That experience taught me not to rush important decisions, to let relationships unfold naturally. But the truth was, I desperately wanted children. I'd wanted them for years. Every time I saw families in my practice, parents beaming as their kids got their braces off, siblings teasing each other in my waiting room, I felt a hollow ache. I'd bring it up with Elisabeth every few months, trying not to pressure her, but unable to hide my longing completely. She'd kiss my cheek and promise soon, and I'd believe her because I wanted to believe her. What I didn't know was that 2 years ago, Elisabeth had gotten pregnant and terminated it without telling me. I also didn't know she had been doing the same calculations about timing and readiness with 3 other men besides Tommy. The pregnancy test appeared on a Tuesday in January. I had dropped my phone behind the radiator while checking my messages and had to pull the whole unit away from the wall to retrieve it. That's when I saw it, a positive test, carefully wrapped in tissue paper and wedged into the gap. My heart exploded with joy. After years of waiting, of patient conversations and postponed dreams, it was finally happening. We were going to be parents. I stood there in our bathroom, holding that test with shaking hands, imagining everything, teaching a son or daughter to ride a bike, helping with homework, family vacations, all the moments I'd been craving. Tears actually filled my eyes. I couldn't wait to talk to Elisabeth, to plan nursery colors and baby names, to finally start the family I'd been dreaming about. I decided to wait until she got home to bring it up. I wanted to see her face, to share this moment together properly. I tried calling her around noon, barely able to contain my excitement, but she didn't answer. She texted back an hour later, saying she was in surgery. I spent the rest of the day distracted, barely able to focus on my patients. Mrs. Richardson asked me 3 times if I was feeling all right during her daughter's adjustment appointment. When Elisabeth finally came home that evening around 7, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. I had picked up her favorite Thai food and opened a bottle of sparkling cider. I figured she shouldn't be drinking alcohol now. I met her at the door with a huge smile. "We need to talk," I said, unable to keep the happiness out of my voice. But when I held up the pregnancy test, her reaction wasn't what I expected. The color drained from her face, but not in the way of someone surprised by good news. There was no joy, no excitement, no nervousness about impending parenthood. There was pure, undiluted fear. "Marc, I can explain." My smile faltered. Something was very wrong. "Explain what?" "This is wonderful news. I know we said we'd wait, but maybe it's a sign. Maybe the universe is telling us we're ready." "Marc, stop." Her voice cracked. "Just stop." I set down the test on the kitchen counter, my excitement curdling into confusion and dread. Elisabeth, what's going on? She sat down heavily on the couch, and Rufus immediately jumped into her lap, sensing tension the way cats do. She buried her face in his orange fur for a long moment before looking up at me. I'm not pregnant anymore. The words didn't make sense at first. What do you mean? This test is positive. It was hidden behind. I had an abortion. Last week. The room tilted. I actually had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. Our baby? You terminated our baby without even discussing it. My voice was rising now, all that joy turning into something sharp and painful. I've been asking you about children for years. Years, Elisabeth. And you got pregnant and just ended it? Without even telling me? She was crying now, but I couldn't find any sympathy. Not yet. Not when my dreams were being shredded in front of me. It wasn't yours. 3 words. That's all it took to detonate 8 years of marriage and every future I'd imagined. I stumbled backward, actually sitting down hard on the floor. What? The baby wasn't yours, Marc. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The Thai food sat cold and forgotten on the counter. The sparkling cider I'd bought to celebrate seemed to mock me from the kitchen table. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, trying to process what she'd just said. Minutes? Hours? Time had stopped meaning anything. Explain, I finally managed. Explain everything. Right now. And so she did. Every detail. Every lie. Every betrayal. Tommy was a personal trainer she'd met at the park 6 months ago while walking Rufus. He was 28, charming, had a body that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, and apparently possessed enough charisma to make my wife forget she had a husband waiting at home. They'd meet at his apartment in Pasadena twice a week, sometimes more. The emergency surgeries and late nights at the clinic were often just cover stories. But Tommy wasn't the only one. There was Hector, a pharmaceutical sales rep who visited her clinic regularly. He'd take her to hotels in neighboring cities, Glendale, Burbank, sometimes as far as Santa Monica, during what she claimed were lunch breaks. There was Victor, a dog groomer who worked 2 buildings down from her practice. They'd close up their respective businesses and meet in his shop after hours, surrounded by cages and grooming tables. And there was someone else, someone she'd been involved with earlier in our marriage, before Tommy, before the others. She refused to name him, saying only that he was from before and didn't matter anymore. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How long has this been going on? The first time was about a year after we got married. 7 years. She had been unfaithful for 7 years. While I was building my practice, recommending her clinic to my patients' pet-owning families, planning our future together, she had been living an entirely different life. I pressed for more details, needing to understand the full scope of the betrayal. She admitted the stains I'd occasionally noticed on her clothes, makeup on a collar, traces of unfamiliar cologne, once even what looked like lipstick on her shoulder, weren't from handling animals at work like she'd claimed. The late nights weren't all emergencies. The weekend veterinary conferences she attended weren't always about continuing education. Sometimes they were just excuses to spend 2 days in a hotel with Tommy or one of the others. Did you ever love me? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. I thought I did. I wanted to. You're stable, kind, successful. You were everything I thought I should want. She was still crying, mascara running down her face. You're a good man, Marc. You deserve so much better than what I've given you. But Tommy made me feel alive in ways I couldn't explain. The others, they each gave me something different. Something I was missing. What about what I was missing? My voice broke. I've been asking you for a family for years. I've been patient, understanding, waiting for you to be ready. And all this time you were pregnant and didn't even tell me. I found out 3 weeks ago. I was late, took a test, and it was positive. I panicked. Did Tommy know about the pregnancy? Yes. I told him the same day I found out. And he said it was my decision, but he wasn't ready to be a father. He's training for some bodybuilding competition in Las Vegas this spring and didn't want the distraction. She said it so matter-of-factly, as if the casual cruelty of it was perfectly normal. He said a baby would throw off his diet and training schedule. I felt nauseous. The man my wife had been sleeping with cared more about his abs than about a human life. And somehow, Elisabeth had found this acceptable. And the others? Do they know about each other? No. Tommy thinks he's the only one besides you. Hector thinks the same. Victor doesn't ask questions. Jesus Christ, Elisabeth. I stood up, suddenly unable to be near her. Were you ever going to tell me? Any of it? I don't know. I kept thinking I'd end it, that I'd stop and we'd go back to normal. But I never did. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't know whose it was, and I couldn't deal with it. So I took care of it. You mean you killed our potential child because you couldn't keep track of who you'd been sleeping with? She flinched at my words, but didn't argue. Marc, please. Get out of my sight. I couldn't look at her anymore. I need you to leave. Go stay with your parents. Go stay with Tommy for all I care. Just get out. She left within the hour, stuffing clothes into a suitcase while I sat in our bedroom doorway, making sure she didn't take anything that mattered to me. She reached for Rufus, but I pulled the cat away. He stays with me. After she left, I spent the night sitting on the couch with Rufus purring in my lap, staring at the walls of our apartment. The home we'd built together suddenly felt like a crime scene, every surface contaminated by lies. I couldn't sleep in our bed. I couldn't eat the food in our refrigerator. I couldn't exist in that space knowing what had happened there, what I hadn't seen while I was busy being a faithful, loving husband. The next morning, I called Barbara Mitchell, the attorney who had handled my first divorce. Her name was easy to remember because my sister is also named Barbara. She was in her 50s, sharp as a razor, and had seen every possible variation of human betrayal in her 25 years of practice. Marc, it's been 8 years since we worked together? Her voice was warm but professional. I'm guessing this isn't a social call. I need to divorce my wife. Multiple affairs over 7 years, undisclosed abortion, systematic deception. I need this done fast, and I need it done right. There was a pause. Come to my office this afternoon. Bring any documentation you have, texts, emails, anything. California is a no-fault state, but this kind of extensive misconduct can absolutely influence asset division and spousal support decisions. We're going to document everything. I went back to the apartment when I knew Elisabeth was at work. I packed my essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents, my laptop. I took Rufus with me, along with all his supplies. The cat had been a gift from my sister Dorothy 2 years ago when her own cat had a litter, and I wasn't leaving him in that apartment full of lies. I checked into an extended stay hotel near my practice and tried to figure out how to keep functioning when my entire world had collapsed. But as the days passed and the initial shock wore off, something else emerged: anger. Pure, focused, determined anger. Elisabeth had stolen years from me. Years I could have spent finding someone who actually wanted the same things I did, who could be honest with me, who wouldn't betray me while I was at work straightening kids' teeth and dreaming about a family we'd never have. And she wasn't going to get away with it. I started by creating a fake social media profile, a generic name, a stock photo, no friends or followers. I found Tommy within an hour. Personal trainers aren't hard to locate. They advertise constantly, always hustling for new clients. He worked at a gym called Peak Fitness in Pasadena, just 15 minutes from our apartment. His profile was public, full of shirtless photos showing off his physique, inspirational quotes about discipline and respect and living your truth. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had posts about integrity and honor between photos of protein shakes and gym equipment. Finding Hector took slightly longer, but Elisabeth had been careless with her second phone. Yes, she had a second phone, which I found buried in her nightstand drawer when I went back for more of my belongings. The phone was full of texts, photos, hotel reservations. Hector worked for a pharmaceutical company that supplied Elisabeth's clinic. He had a wife and 2 kids in La Canada, Flintridge. His Facebook page was full of family photos, vacations to Disneyland, birthday parties, posts about being blessed and grateful. Victor was the easiest. His dog grooming business, Pampered Paws, was literally 2 buildings down from Elisabeth's clinic. They'd been meeting after hours for over a year, apparently finding the proximity convenient. His Instagram was full of before and after photos of perfectly groomed dogs. I took screenshots of everything. Every text Elisabeth had sent these men. Every hotel reservation. Every lie she'd told me that I could now prove was a lie. Barbara was right, documentation was key. Then I hired a process server to deliver the divorce papers to Elisabeth at her clinic, right in the middle of her afternoon appointments on a Thursday. I specifically requested that it happen when the waiting room was full. I wanted her colleagues to see, to ask questions, to know. It was petty and I knew it, but I had stopped caring about being the bigger person. The bigger person had gotten screwed over for 7 years while trying to be patient and understanding. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I spent a weekend carefully crafting anonymous messages to Tommy, Hector, and Victor. I didn't want to come across as crazy or vindictive. I wanted to seem concerned, like someone who had stumbled across information they felt these men deserved to know. To Tommy, I sent screenshots of Elisabeth's texts with Hector and Victor, clearly showing overlapping dates and times. I included a message. Thought you should know the woman you're involved with is seeing at least 2 other men besides her husband. The pregnancy she mentioned last month? She had no idea which of you 4 might be the father. Figured you deserved to know who you're really dealing with. To Hector, I sent similar screenshots, but I made sure to include photos of his wife and kids from his public Facebook page. Does your family know you're spending your lunch breaks at the Marriott in Glendale with a married woman who's also sleeping with at least 2 other guys? Your wife seems nice. Shame she has no idea. To Victor, I sent everything, including the detail that Elisabeth had been using their after-hours meetups as an excuse to avoid going home to me. The woman you've been seeing is married, sleeping with at least 2 other guys, and just had an abortion because she couldn't figure out who the father was. Thought you'd want to know. I sent the messages on a Monday morning and watched the fallout unfold in real time through mutual acquaintances and the local gossip mill that is Pasadena's small business community. Tommy showed up at Elisabeth's clinic by lunchtime, causing a scene that required security to escort him out. According to someone who witnessed it, a client of mine whose dog goes to Elisabeth's practice, he was screaming about lies and betrayal, demanding to know why she hadn't told him about the others. Elisabeth's receptionist had to call the police when he wouldn't leave the parking lot. Hector called her office phone 37 times in one day, according to the phone logs Barbara subpoenaed later. He left voicemails ranging from angry to desperate to threatening legal action for defamation, though I'm not sure what he thought she'd defamed since everything was true. His wife apparently found the messages I'd sent. I'd made sure to send them to her as well, not just to him, and confronted him that same evening. By Wednesday, she'd filed for divorce and kicked him out of their house. Victor's situation was almost comical if it weren't so messy. He apparently had a serious girlfriend, not Elisabeth, who somehow found out about everything. Whether Victor told her or she discovered it another way, I don't know. But she showed up at our apartment building on Tuesday evening, screaming in the parking lot until neighbors called the police. She was yelling about homewreckers and liars, throwing what looked like dog grooming supplies at the building. The whole thing made the local neighborhood watch Facebook group, complete with videos. Elisabeth called me in tears late Tuesday night. What did you do? I was in my hotel room, Rufus curled up beside me, watching a basketball game I wasn't really processing. I told them the truth. Something you should have done years ago. You've ruined everything. Tommy lost his job at the gym because of the scene he caused. Hector's wife is divorcing him and threatening to destroy his career. Victor's girlfriend is harassing my staff, coming to the clinic following me. My business partner is asking questions. My clients are canceling appointments. You've destroyed my life. No, Elisabeth. My voice was calm, which seemed to infuriate her more. You did that all by yourself. You destroyed your own life with 7 years of lies. I just made sure everyone else knew who they were really involved with. How is that any different from what you did to me? Except I deserved loyalty, and they deserved truth. Nobody got what they deserved until now. I could lose my practice over this. Good. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. Every time you lied, every time you snuck out to be with one of them, every time you came home and pretended everything was fine, you chose to hurt me. The only thing you didn't mean was to get caught. She hung up on me. I turned off my phone and went to sleep more peacefully than I had in weeks. The divorce proceedings moved forward with brutal efficiency. Barbara was absolutely ruthless, and I loved her for it. We had acquired the apartment during our marriage, along with our cars, furniture, and most of our significant possessions. Given the circumstances and the overwhelming evidence of Elisabeth's extended deception, the judge was sympathetic to my position. During the hearings, Barbara presented everything: the texts, the hotel receipts I'd found on Elisabeth's secret phone, testimony from the process server about Elisabeth's reaction to being served, even a statement from Elisabeth's own business partner, confirming that my wife had frequently lied about her whereabouts. The judge's expression grew colder with each piece of evidence. I got the apartment, all of it, despite Elisabeth having paid half the rent for 8 years. I got the better car, the one we'd bought together just 2 years ago. I got most of our savings, except for what Elisabeth needed to cover her own attorney fees and immediate living expenses. The judge ordered her to pay me spousal support for 6 months while I recovered from the emotional damages of her extensive marital misconduct. That last part was almost funny. I didn't need her money, but the symbolism of it mattered. More importantly, I made sure certain details became part of the public record. The abortion she had hidden from me, the multiple affairs spanning 7 years, the calculated deception and systematic lying. In California, divorce proceedings are public record unless sealed by a judge, and Barbara made sure there was no reason to seal ours. Every detail was there for anyone to see. The impact on Elisabeth's professional reputation in Pasadena's tight-knit veterinary community was immediate and severe. I heard through Dorothy, who heard through her network of friends, that some of Elisabeth's longtime clients started taking their pets elsewhere when word spread. Apparently, people who trust you with their animals, their beloved family members, also expect basic honesty and ethical behavior in your personal life. The logic wasn't hard to follow. If you can lie to your husband for 7 years, how do we know you're being honest about our pet's treatments? Her business partner, a woman coincidentally also named Barbara, dissolved their partnership within 3 months of the divorce being filed. She released a statement saying she needed to protect the integrity of the practice and couldn't be associated with the controversy. Elisabeth was left scrambling to find a new location, new clients, new everything. The practice they'd built together essentially went to Barbara, the business partner, while Elisabeth was left with scraps. Tommy lost his job at Peak Fitness when management learned he'd caused a disturbance at a client's workplace. The gym had a strict policy about employee conduct, and screaming at someone in a parking lot while police were called didn't exactly fit their wellness and positivity brand. Last I heard, he was working at a 24-hour chain gym in Nevada, far from his bodybuilding dreams. Hector's situation spiraled dramatically. His wife not only divorced him, but made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why. His company received complaints about his conduct, apparently, using work time and work-sanctioned client visits to conduct an affair was frowned upon. He wasn't fired, but he was transferred to a territory in Northern California, far from his kids, far from the life he'd built. His ex-wife got the house, primary custody, and most of their assets. Victor's grooming business survived, but barely. His girlfriend had been helping him run it, and when she left, he struggled to keep up with appointments and administrative tasks. He had to hire help he couldn't really afford. His online reviews took a hit from the drama. People had videotaped his girlfriend's meltdown in my apartment parking lot, and someone connected it to his business. He eventually sold Pampered Paws and moved his operations to a smaller, cheaper location in Monrovia. The most satisfying revenge, though, wasn't watching them all suffer consequences. It was simply moving on with my life. I had rebuilt my life, new apartment with better heating, thriving practice, Rufus purring contentedly on my couch each evening. I started dating again, cautiously but hopefully. Dorothy set me up with one of her colleagues, a teacher named Jennifer who had never been married and who laughed at my jokes about orthodontic puns. The therapy helped too. I had carried guilt for months, wondering what I had done wrong, what I could have fixed. My therapist, a patient man who specialized in betrayal trauma, helped me understand that Elisabeth's choices were her own. Her affairs, her lies, her abortion, none of it was my fault or my responsibility. I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about ensuring that actions have consequences, that the truth comes to light, and that justice, even imperfect justice, is served. A year after everything ended, I heard that Elisabeth had moved to Arizona, trying to start fresh where nobody knew her story. Tommy, last I heard, was working at a gym in Nevada. Hector had moved to Northern California after his divorce. Victor stayed in Pasadena, but kept a much lower profile. I stayed too. This was my city, my practice, my life. I refused to be the one who ran. On the 2nd anniversary of the day I found that pregnancy test, I took Rufus to the park where Elisabeth had met Tommy. We sat on a bench in the winter sunshine, warmer than it had been 2 years before, and I realized I felt nothing when I looked at that park. No anger, no pain, no regret, just relief that I had escaped. The trust one had given Elisabeth was gone, shattered by her own hands. But I had learned that I could trust myself, my judgment, my worth, my capacity to survive betrayal and build something better. I never saw or spoke to Elisabeth again. The last I heard, she was working at an emergency veterinary hospital in Phoenix, taking night shifts because they paid better and asked fewer questions about your past. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled everything, the public exposure, the messages to her affair partners, the aggressive divorce proceedings. I tell them honestly, no. Elisabeth had spent 7 years making calculated choices to deceive me. I spent 3 months making calculated choices to ensure everyone knew the truth. That seems fair to me. The apartment still has Rufus's orange fur on every surface. My practice is busier than ever. I'm planning a trip to Colorado with Jennifer this spring. Life is good in ways I had forgotten were possible. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some betrayals are too deep, too calculated, too cruel to forgive. Elisabeth had every opportunity to be honest with me about her feelings, her affairs, her pregnancy. She chose deception at every turn. So I chose truth. And truth, as it turns out, was the best revenge of all. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.